Thank you. How are you, EXP? Yeah, let's go. The fuck guy's here. This is, speaking of personal brands, by the way, you're going to get like a full in-your-face personal brand from the stage at the moment. This is 7 harsh truths to unfuck your life and hopefully your business. I know this is a business thing, so I'm going to weave in some business examples. But you might be asking, why harsh truths, Mark? Why do we have to be so harsh all the time? Why can't we have cuddly truths? Why can't we have joyous truths, epiphanic truths? And the truth is, as David Foster Wallace said, the truth will set you free, but only after it's had its way with you first. And of course, my twisted mind thinks of something like this. So bend over, grab your ankles. We're going to have 7 doses of truth today. The first thing we're going to talk about is the one mental mistake that, in my opinion, leads to probably 99% of bad decisions. It's something that we all do. It's something that we all constantly do, both in business and in life. We're going to talk about why we blame others for our problems and, hopefully, how we can stop. We'll talk about an unexpected definition of evil. I'll explain why I think World War II survivors were the best psychologists. And finally, I'll talk about the importance of living an unbalanced life. Does that sound like fun? Yeah? Okay. We'll go to the bar after, don't worry. All right, truth number 1. Everything in life is a trade-off. This is something that on the surface feels so obvious, it's almost like a cliche. But when you start digging into it, you kind of get into this rabbit hole that just goes forever, right? So, on the obvious level, like I can go down to a local coffee shop and pay for a cup of coffee, and it's like, okay, there's the trade-off. I just gave up, whatever, 10 quid. I don't know what the hell a quid is, but 10 quid. I get a latte back. That's probably extremely overpriced. I don't know. And boom, there's your trade-off. In business, we have to struggle with trade-offs all the time, right? It's like, do I hire another person on my team? Well, if I bring another person on, that increases my expenses. Now I have more overhead. Now I have to manage somebody. Nobody wants to manage. Is that going to be worth it? Is that a good trade-off? Now in business, we have all sorts of tools and structures in place to help us think about these trade-offs and manage these trade-offs on a day-to-day basis. We have spreadsheets and we have meetings and we have financial projections and quarterly reports and all sorts of stuff. And that helps us keep the trade-offs balanced in our minds. But in our personal lives, we tend to be absolutely terrible about this. We tend to only think about the good thing and ignore all of the bad things, or we tend to only think about the bad things and ignore all of the potential good things. For example, let's say, let's say you read a book on animal rights and you get really inspired by it. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to go vegan. And in that moment, you feel very passionate. You feel proud of yourself. There's a lot of sense of purpose and meaning. You're doing something good for the world. And in that moment, you're probably not considering the fact that you will never get invited to dinner by anybody ever again. It's a trade-off. We don't think about these things. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with me, I actually started blogging in the late 2000s. I started a personal brand in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And I kind of ended up on this this brand of vulgar, non-bullshitty self-help. I sometimes joke that it's self-help for people who hate self-help. And eventually it led to this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Now, it's interesting, as the talk before me was about brands, I was thinking, ultimately, a good brand demands a trade-off. Because to brand yourself well, you need to differentiate yourself well. You need to make it extremely clear to the market who you're for and definitely who you're not for. And so there's going to be trade-offs that come with that. In my case, when I started down this path of vulgarity and no bullshit, I understood that there was a very hungry market for that sort of advice. And this sort of communication style. And that was great. I was like finding my niche, and my audience was blowing up, and I was getting a ton of attention. And I also understood that there was negative trade-offs, negative side effects of that. For example, there's a whole swath of bookstores in the middle of the United States that still won't carry my book, because it's a very religious part of the country. I also understood that no self-respecting business group would ever invite me to speak on stage. So I haven't had as many speaking gigs as a lot of other people. But then there were trade-offs I didn't consider. Some things last, when you're building a business or a brand today, you're so focused on the next quarter or the next year. Oftentimes you don't think about 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And it's funny because with the whole fuck thing, when I was 30 and full of piss and vinegar, it landed really well. But now I'm 40 and I've got a bunch of money and I'm fat and I'm happy. And so I kind of feel like this guy sometimes. And I definitely feel like this when I post on TikTok. But ultimately, the takeaway here is that generally speaking, our worst decisions happen when we prioritize short-term emotions and deprioritize long-term commitments, where we take the upside of the trade-off is some short-term high, and the downside of the trade-off is some sort of long-term cost. And as we're going to see, our minds are very bad at managing this. Like, if you think about all the biggest mistakes you've made in your life, they probably boil down to this in some shape or form. Truth number 2, our mind's natural tendency is to deny that there's a trade-off to our decisions. Now, there's a very practical psychological explanation for this, but it's funny because sometimes I feel like most of what I do is simply reminding people all the time of the trade-offs that are in front of their nose, but they can't see. So like the person you marry is the person you fight with. The house you buy is the house you repair. The dream job you take is the job you stress over. Everything comes with an inherent sacrifice. Whatever makes us feel good will also inevitably make us feel bad. The problem is we just want to feel good. I mean, you guys probably see it all the time. You don't take a prospective home buyer and you're like, well, okay, let's talk about taxes and maintenance and the plumbing needs some work. No, nobody wants to. Everybody's excited. Everybody's about to live their dream. They're looking for their dream home, right? You don't want to piss all over that. The reason we're bad at holding these two positive and negative things in mind at the same time is actually very simple. We're monkeys. And our psychology did not evolve to accurately weigh truth. It evolved to survive. It evolved to notice when something shiny and exciting is off in the distance and to run after it. Or to notice when something scary and terrible is potentially going to threaten us and then run away from it. And so it takes a lot of cognitive effort to sit down and actually think through, okay, what am I giving up if I pursue this? What are the potential problems that this is going to cause? What are the second and third order effects of this? Is this helping me become the person that I ideally want to become? It takes a lot of work. And if you're not really willing to do that work, you end up in something called black and white thinking. Now, anybody who's familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, there's these class of things called cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are basically false beliefs that inflict suffering on ourselves, and one of the most common ones is black and white thinking. This inability to weigh trade-offs in our minds, to understand that every good thing we pursue is going to have costs and sacrifices associated with it, and every bad thing that we avoid has potential lessons and opportunities bundled up inside of it. But wait, it gets even worse. Truth number 3, we tend to blame others for our costs and take the credit for the benefits. In psychology, there's a great term for this. It's called the actor-observer bias. And it basically says that, when I do something, it's because I'm just a well-intended, well-meaning person who happened to make a mistake. Like if I run the red light, it's because I'm late to a very important meeting, and I would have stopped if I had time to. Whereas if you run a red light, you are a fucking maniac and you should have your license revoked, and oh my God, I can't believe they let people like this on the road. We all do this all the time. This is it's like a knee-jerk response to things that happen in our lives. There's a great quip from the comedian George Carlin that reminds me of this. He said, "Have you ever noticed that anyone driving slower than you is an idiot and anyone driving faster than you is a maniac?" It's amazing how we are always driving the correct speed at all times. So when you take this inability to weigh trade-offs and the defense mechanism of avoiding the trade-off by just blaming everybody else for the downside and taking all the credit for the upside, this is how you end up being an entitled twat. And again, we all do this. This is like the knee-jerk natural reaction. I feel it when I'm with my friends. I feel it when I'm with my employees. There's this tendency, I just started a new company this year. I meet with my co-founder and I feel the thought creep up. I'm like, man, it kind of feels like I'm doing everything. And I have to stop that. We all want to take credit for everything that's good. We all want to outsource everything that feels bad. And really, resisting this entitlement, there's a lot that's said these days about how people are becoming more entitled and more narcissistic and more self-absorbed. And there is some data that suggests that might be true. And there's a lot of hand-wringing on TV and whatnot about, what's happening to people and who's teaching them to be like this. The funny thing is that if you look at the psychology, people are not taught to be like this. They're taught to not be like this. You don't learn entitlement. You have to unlearn it. If you think about a 5-year-old, no 5-year-old is ever like, I really want ice cream tonight, but I wonder what the cost benefits of sitting down and, I wonder if dad would consider. No, a 5-year-old's like, I want ice cream, and if you don't give it to him, you're the asshole. And I would argue, too, that it's succumbing to this natural tendency that starts to make us bad people. As Wallace also said, he said, evil people never believe that they are evil. They tend to believe that everybody else is evil. They think everybody else is the cause of all their problems. They're always, it's this person's fault, or the government's fault, or society's fault, or it's the fucking phone's fault. And it's very easy to fall into that trap. I would also say you could invert this as well, and you could say that good people tend to not believe that they are good, but rather that they see the good in everybody else. Speaking of evil people, I wanted to put a slide here of the most evil person I could think of. And I did a tour in Australia last fall, and I put it in there, and I have no point to make on this slide. Truth number 4, the enemy of growth is not stagnation, but delusion. Because our default mechanism is to take credit for all the good things and pretend all the bad things don't exist, this necessarily requires us to delude ourselves about ourselves in the world, to lie to ourselves about who gets the credit and who's responsible, whose fault it is. Jean-Paul Sartre had a term for this. He called it living in bad faith. He said that people will lie to themselves to avoid taking responsibility for the trade-offs in their lives, to take responsibility of I chose this and there's an associated downside. I chose to put myself out there more to try to grow my business, and so of course I'm going to get hate. Or I chose to aggressively pursue more clients through cold outreach. So, of course, people are going to be annoyed with me. It's much easier to just hide and pretend like you didn't make the choice at all. How many people, I was told that a lot of people here are either have recently made the leap from working for another firm to starting their own or are thinking about making that leap. Is that true? How many people? How fucking terrifying is it? It's like go from where it's like, well, it's not my name on the door, so if something goes wrong, I'm okay, to, okay, everything that goes wrong, it's now on my plate. It's absolutely terrifying. Keeps you up at night. But that is the cost of freedom and autonomy. That is the cost of reaching for your own potential. Now, another great philosopher once said, personal growth is simply learning to lie to yourself a little bit less. Got to self-promote, by the way. It's not, one of the drums that I bang on in my industry all the time is that it's like, all these people, they spend all this money, they go to seminars, they think they're going to learn like a framework or some 7-step method that's going to solve everything. And it's not about learning more, it's about unlearning all the bullshit, all the stories and narratives that you bought into that are delusional, that you don't know if they're actually true or not. This is why I always tell people, don't try to change, just make experiments. Like, don't try to be a new person next week. Just take 30 days and dip your toe in the water and find out, right? I think there's this kind of dramatic or romantic notion that we have to like completely reinvent ourselves and become a new person overnight. That somehow like personal transformation is like this lightning bolt that comes out of the sky and it's like, boom, oh my God, now I'm a sober entrepreneur. Where did that come from? And it's like, no, it's actually what change looks like is it's a steady stream of small iterations over a long period of time. And if something is scary to you, you can create small experiments to expose yourself to it, right? So you don't have to go from 0 to 60 overnight. You can say, hey, I'm going to take this week and I'm going to try this new outreach method. And I'm going to see if it works. See if it works and if it feels good. Again, businesses, we have systems to force ourselves to do this. We have marketing experiments. We have, A/B testing. We have all sorts of internal processes to experiment with stuff. But don't just experiment with the business processes, experiment with how it feels for yourself. Because what you usually discover is like, oh, this thing that I thought was going to be really cool is actually making me miserable. And it's like the worst work of my week. Maybe I shouldn't pursue this, even if it is going to be profitable. Or sometimes you discover that something that you thought was going to be very intimidating and very scary ends up being fun. And this kind of comes back to what is a good trade-off and what is a bad trade-off? I would say what a good trade-off is, all trade-offs are painful, but a good trade-off doesn't feel like suffering. One way to think about it is that we're all secretly a little bit masochistic. There's a certain type of pain that each of us kind of likes. And if you all think about what has made you successful in your career, it's probably a shit sandwich that you don't mind eating that everybody else hates. I'm willing to bet. Because that generally tends to be people's sweet spot. If you can find the thing that everybody else dreads but you don't mind, that's where your competitive advantage shows up. That's where you gain a massive skill advantage. That's where things start to feel easy. But if you resist that, if you just keep trying to look for the thing that's not difficult or not a struggle or that is fun all the time, you're just going to be looking forever. The difference between pain and suffering, I think, is also, it's very important and it's very interesting. In Buddhism, they have this there's a really cool metaphor about this, which is the Buddha said that when you experience pain in your life, it's like getting struck by two arrows simultaneously. The first arrow is the surface level arrow. It's the arrow piercing your skin. It's the physical pain. If it's an emotional pain, it's kind of the initial ugh, this is awful. But the first arrow is always temporary. And it eventually, the body recuperates and the body heals and time solves it naturally. But the second arrow is all of the stories and explanations that we create for ourselves about the first arrow. So the second arrow is like, my God, why am I always the one who gets shot? What did I do to deserve this pain? Why didn't Jim get shot? Jim totally deserves to be shot more than I do. What the hell happened? What's he doing that I'm not? And it's these stories that we gin up about our struggles and our pain that last forever, potentially. And at a certain point, we forget that we created these stories for ourselves. And this could be anything from childhood trauma to something really basic like, well, I'm just not an outgoing person, or I'm not good at sales, or, yeah, I'm not really cut out for that type of role. So to me, this is why this is the most important question, maybe in life, if I wanted to be dramatic. What pain do you want to sustain? Because you're going to have to, life's going to be painful. Business is going to be painful. Choose the one you want. Having a boss sucks. Being the boss sucks. Choose the pain you want. Working 60 hours a week to make a shitload of money is hard. Working 30 hours a week and not having enough money is hard. Choose the hard. You have to choose the downside. Choose the cost of the trade-off. Our default is to always choose the benefits of the trade-offs. Oh, I want to have a lot of money. I want to be my own boss. I want to take tons of vacation. I want to be, huge on Instagram, whatever. It's easy to think about the upside, but think about the downside you want, that you're willing to deal with. Truth number 6, the more downside you can stomach, obviously the more upside you'll be able to enjoy. Now there's a lot of, in some sense this is kind of the classic no pain, no gain admonishment. There's a lot of examples I could have chosen around this. I chose my main man, Arnie. Schwarzenegger is super interesting if you read about, so he was Mr. Olympia 7 times straight. He's widely considered the best bodybuilder of all time. It's really interesting if you read his autobiography and you read about that period of his life. His daily routine was absolutely absurd. So he would wake up 5 or 6 in the morning. He'd go to the gym for 2 hours, work out. He'd just moved to the US. He barely spoke English. He didn't know anybody. He'd work out for 2 hours in the morning, go work a construction job, do a full 8-hour shift, laying bricks and churning cement. Go home, eat, nap, go back to the gym, do another hour in the gym, go home, eat, sleep, get up at 5 a.m. the next day, and do it again. And he did that for 5 or 6 years straight. Now, sometimes I call this productivity porn. These sorts of stories is oh yeah, you just gotta fucking grind and hustle. I think that's the first arrow takeaway, right? Okay, yeah, he could sustain a lot of pain So obviously, he got a lot of upside. What I think is way more interesting is the second arrow interpretation of Schwarzenegger's story. Because what doesn't get talked about in his origin story is that he had no social life. He had no hobbies. He briefly had a marriage, but it failed. He had one friend. He barely spoke English. Didn't go on vacations. He had no life. In fact, if you met him on the beach when he was in this period, you would probably be like, wow, this guy's, get a life, dude. What are you doing? He was broke for most of this period. What's interesting to me is that there's like an infinite number of potential Arnolds in alternate universes. The Arnold that had a social life, the Arnold that took breaks, the Arnold that kept his marriage together, the Arnold that had other hobbies and interests, the Arnold that made time to pursue other things to make ends meet. And he gave up all of those possible alternative identities and just went all in on this one identity. And I think that's actually a really important thing for all of us to consider, especially in this day and age, because we live in an era where opportunities are almost endless. Like, if you're an educated person working in the UK, they're essentially endless. You can get online, you can learn about anything, you can try anything, you can train for anything. And this is actually, I think, a problem for our generation because we have access to so many things that we start to develop this unreasonable expectation that we should be doing all these things, that we should be great at 6 different things simultaneously. And that's completely unrealistic. Which is truth number 7. There is no such thing as a balanced life. Because if you think about it, there's probably only 2 or 3 things that you enjoy sacrificing for. You're probably only a secret masochist for a handful of things. And once you find those things, it makes sense that you go all in on those things. Not just practically as it being a competitive advantage, but like that's actually the thing that's going to bring a sense of meaning to your life, that it's a sacrifice that you enjoy making, that it's going to feel purposeful, that 10 years down the line, you're going to look back and you're like, God damn, I gave up a lot for that, but I did something that nobody else was able to do. Like this idea that, you can crush your career and have a great social life and learn French on weekends and read a book a week and go on awesome vacations and go to every new restaurant opening and beat your friends in pickleball and on and on and on and on. It's just a delusion. It's a distraction. And so maybe the most practical piece of advice I would give to you guys is to narrow your focus. Really just find that handful of things that bring the most meaning, those few sacrifices that enrich your life the most, and just go all in on them. Choose the suck that you enjoy. Sucking, I guess is the word. Would you say that? I don't even know if you would say that. And just really leverage the shit out of it. Now, and really try to bring back the trade-off in everything. This is why journaling is good. This is why therapy can be good. This is why talking to a smart friend or having a mastermind or coming to events like this is good, because people remind you of the trade-offs. When you run, whether it's a personal issue or a business issue, when you run the problem through somebody else, they'll look at it and they'll be like, well, do you realize you're giving this up over here for that? And like, this should be expected. Because we all need that reminder all the time. We are not built to know it naturally. And refusing to accept trade-offs is itself a terrible trade-off. Trade-offs are like Michael Myers. You can shoot them, You can burn them, you can stab them. They just come back. Now, if you'll indulge me for a minute, I want to finish a little philosophical. When I was putting this talk together last year, I realized something really interesting, which is that like all my intellectual heroes were World War II survivors. And I thought this was really interesting because, you know, such a key theme of my work is loss, sacrifice, being defined by what you give up, the importance of struggle, the importance of challenge, the ubiquity of hardship. And I'm like, wow, all the people I'm most inspired by like literally lived through the worst shit in human history and then wrote about it. So obviously Freud is here on the left. Freud, I kind of think of Freud like, it's kind of like Metallica. Like, has two different eras in his career. So early Freud is the Freud that you were probably taught in school. It's all about the unconscious and dicks, and your mom has a dick, and you want to fuck your mom, and like, early Freud is just completely unhinged. He was doing a lot of cocaine at the time, so like Metallica, he was doing a lot of cocaine. But late Freud is great. Late Freud is like very philosophical. He was a very worn down, despondent man at the time, and of course the greatest writing comes from miserable people. So Freud was a Jew living in Vienna when the Nazis invaded. He had to literally be physically dragged out of the city by his friends and family in order to leave. He moved to London, where he lived the rest of his life. You can actually go see his house there. It's pretty cool. And when he was living in London, he wrote a book called Civilization and Its Discontents. And it was very much inspired by what was happening in Europe. Freud would not live to see the end of the war, and so he was in a very deep depression about the state of the world and society. And in that book, he wrote that essentially, underneath a very thin surface of civilizing forces, ultimately we're monkeys. It's our monkey brains that are very self-indulgent, that don't manage trade-offs well, that can't think ahead, that can't give other people credit. And his plea in that book was to be careful. Because it's when you strip away the institutions and the forces, when the monkey brains are released, it's all hell breaks loose. The man in the middle is Viktor Frankl. He actually survived. He was a psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz. And Frankl's book, if you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning, I recommend it to every single human being. It's a phenomenal book. In it, it's part memoir about his time in the concentration camp, and then it's part kind of psychology and philosophy. But in that book, he talks about how, paradoxically, it was the people who survived the camps tended to be the people who cared about something more than themselves, essentially. People who had a reason outside of themselves to go on. That with almost 100% certainty, anybody who was just focused on themselves getting through the next day, they would eventually succumb to the circumstances. And then finally, Jean-Paul Sartre. Most people don't know his story. He had the unfortunate situation of being French, so he was instantly captured and spent about 18 months in a POW camp. And during his time in that camp, he was isolated almost the entire time. And so to pass the time, he would just journal furiously in his isolation. Before the war, he was actually a playwright and a novelist. So during his journaling in the POW camp, as the months went by, he started to notice something that kind of freaked him out, which is that the more time he spent in the prison, the more it kind of relieved his anxiety and stress. Like, he actually started to enjoy the fact that he didn't have to make decisions for himself. He started to savor the fact that he wasn't responsible for the outcomes in his own life. And this scared the shit out of him. And he went on and wrote his great philosophical work immediately after the war, and in that work he talked about how ultimately freedom is terrifying, because with freedom comes the ownership of our choices, the ownership of our trade-offs. And so if people are given the chance, they will look for ways to offload their freedom and autonomy to other people so that they don't have to shoulder the burden of their own choices and their own trade-offs. And then finally, there's this guy, Carl Jung. I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Now, Jung, completely different story than the other three guys. Jung was not Jewish. He lived in Switzerland, and he collaborated with the Nazis. So, like, the Nazis had this weird thing where they were really into psychoanalysis, but all the psychoanalysts were Jewish, so, like, they were caught in this awkward spot, and then Jung happened to be the one that wasn't Jewish. And so they invited Jung out to Berlin, and he would give these lectures, and he would hang out with the Nazi leadership, and he'd fly back and forth between Switzerland and Berlin. He met Hitler at one point. He had access to all their medical records. He gave them medical advice. And for the rest of his life, he was vilified and crucified for this. People trashed him all the time. But something really interesting happened about 10 years ago. So the old head of the CIA from like the 40s and 50s passed away, and all of his personal letters and journals and stuff were made public for the first time ever. And in those journals, it turned out that Carl Jung was a spy. He was actually like one of the most valuable spies that the Allies had. He was one of the only spies that had direct access to the Nazi leadership and Hitler himself. And he was forwarding all of their medical records and their locations and whereabouts the entire time. And he lived the rest of his life without telling anybody. He never defended himself. He never stood up and said, "Hey, actually, I did this thing," which is absolutely incredible when you think about it. Because the other three guys, they had everything taken away from them. And in that moment where they lost everything, they had these profound insights and ideas and shared them with the world. But Jung had nothing taken from him, yet he risked everything at the highest stakes possible. And so for me, that makes this quote, it completely changes the meaning of the quote. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you,
Brilliant.
thank you.
Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Mark, and for joining us all the way from the US. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was awesome. And it really makes you realize you shouldn't sweat the small stuff. You're just going to have to get on and do things. And it really resonated with me. And I've just actually read Man's Search for Meaning. And yeah, fantastic book.
Incredible.
Short read, highly recommended. So brilliant. But before you go, I'm sure there's people in here who are dying to ask a question, to ask someone like you a question. So we have a little mic to throw around.
Where's the microphone?
The box.
Who's
Where is it?
box?
Who's stolen it?
Who's got it? Oh, it's there in the
box.
middle.
We see it. Oh, does that mean you have to ask the first question?
Who's got?
Who's anyone got a question?
It can be personal or business, philosophical, whatever.
Can you throw it that far?
Guys, pass it
Jack? Oh, we're doing a relay, are we? Okay. Hey,
Wow.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Is it on? Hey, there we go. Mark, what's your best advice for getting over kind of imposter syndrome when you kind of really, I guess, doubt your self-worth in the sense of that, yeah?
Good question. I like that one.
It's a great question. Imposter syndrome, so the first thing I'll say is that I think everybody experiences it to a certain degree. I think anybody who says they don't experience it is probably, I don't know, maybe a bit up their own ass. But
Adam said that once, I think.
One thing that I think is important, I used to notice this, you see this a lot with people who lose weight. So has anybody here lost a ton of weight very quickly? Yeah, you've done the opposite, all right. All right. Well, this could apply here as well. So one thing you see a lot with people who lose a lot of weight very quickly is they still think they're big. Like, even though they look completely differently and they or more nimble or whatever, and yeah, it goes the other way too. It's like, you put on 50 kilos and you're like, oh, I can still play basketball, So the same is true with success and attention. So people who generally achieve a lot of success, there's like a 2 to 3 year lag for your brain to kind of catch up and be like, oh yeah, this is normal. And so, especially if you kind of experience a quick ramp up, there's this almost awkward period of like, how did I get here? What did I do? No, I'm the wrong person. I'm not supposed to be here. So part of the answer is to just let your brain do its thing and let it catch up. And the second thing is I wouldn't resist, the feeling of imposter syndrome is itself very normal, and I wouldn't resist it. I wouldn't try to, don't try to get rid of it, just try to leverage it, right? It's anytime you start feeling insecure, just leverage that to work even harder or do even more research or follow up even more. Take that feeling, that anxiety, because that's really just what it is anxiety, and just channel it in a useful direction, and eventually it will go away.
Thank you.
Yep.
There was a question over here somewhere, I think.
Anyone?
Down the front here, we've got a question.
Oh.
Mine, heads up, watch out! Jesus Christ. It's all right, it's all right. It's a
okay.
sponge microphone.
Yeah,
He got the bounce off really well, to be
it
fair.
did bounce really well.
He planned that. So, Mark, I was really interested to hear from you. You talked about the fact you've recently started a new company, and obviously stress has come in with that, as it does with any business. So I think when we sit here in a conference mindset, this stuff really resonates. What do you do practically to stay present to your way of thinking, like day to day? Are there things that you do to stay mindful, I guess?
It's a great question. For those of you who couldn't hear, it was, he mentioned me starting a new company and it's staying present at home with wife and friends. Is that, I'm getting that?
I guess it's how do you maintain your perspective of, not giving a fuck, if you like, in the midst of day to day, away from this kind of setting? How do you hold that in yourself? Do you do things? Do you have mindful practices or reminders? What's the tips?
You mean giving a fuck about my goals and work, or what do you mean specifically?
I mean specifically, how do you stay in your mindset that you've shared here today? It's evident you live that.
Yeah.
So are you doing things practically in order to keep that?
I personally believe everything comes down to prioritization. If one of the things I talk about in the book is there's no such thing as not giving a fuck. It's you simply find more important things to give a fuck about, right? So if you think about the most important thing in your life, a really extreme example is imagine your mother has cancer and the only way to cure it is to make a fool of yourself in this room in front of a people. You would do it in a second. You wouldn't even think about it, right? And that's because your mother is so important to you that it's okay, this trumps everything else. But without that super important thing up here, now it's okay, well, embarrassing myself in this room, it's now it's a big deal, right? Oh, I don't want to say anything or do anything wrong or whatever. So generally speaking, if you find yourself caring way too much about the small inconsequential things, it's because there's a lack of something, some sort of higher, more important purpose. And so I would actually, most people's instinct is to try to get rid of the small trifles, and that's actually opposite. It's you need to actually give more fucks about something bigger and more important. And then the small things just stop mattering.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Anyone else? Questions? Anyone else got questions?
So please, I haven't got for it.
Who's that? Alex hogging the mic. There's no surprise there. Go on, Alex. Whee.
Whoa.
It's my favourite part of the day.
Hello again.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So I deal quite a bit with kind of being burnt out in the last couple of months and stress and getting overwhelmed with even sometimes simple tasks. So just curious to, again, if you've got any tips that kind of help get over that.
Yeah.
Get out your own head.
Well, I'll state the obvious, which is time off, which I'm sure that's not the thing you want to hear, but
What's that?
I'm terrible about doing that too. Generally speaking, I mean, so first of all, jokes aside, even like if you can't take a vacation or whatever, like find a week where you can dial it back a little bit. Like when I find myself starting to get burnt out, like I will try to find like just bits and spaces where it's like, okay, maybe I take off early on a Friday, or maybe I just like take a week a little bit slower than I normally do, just to manage that energy. I kind of think of it as like a marathon. Like if you're going too fast in the first 20 kilometers, like you're just gonna die before you get to the end. So you wanna like pace yourself. The other thing that it signals to me is that I probably need to hire. If you're caught up just in a million little things all the time, because like burnout isn't just, it's not just the amount of hours you're putting in, it's also task switching. So if you could work 8 hours a day, but if you're doing like 15 things in those 8 hours and you're like switching between them over and over and over and over again, that actually burns your mind out much faster than if you just work 10 hours on one thing. So try to batch things, try to eliminate task switching, because that puts like a lot of overhead on your brain. And then try to find strategic places to dial things back. And then, yeah, like, I mean, I don't know what your business situation is like, but yeah, generally it's like if I'm feeling overwhelmed all the time for like multiple weeks or months in a row, it's usually a sign that I need to hire, and I haven't figured that out yet.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Ali Harper down here has a question.
It's a little one.
Mark, you said a minute ago about let the small stuff, but focus on giving a fuck about one bigger thing. What if everything's big? Should we give a fuck about everything? Which I know the answer is no, don't give a fuck about everything, but
Yeah.
how do you prioritize the big shit and narrow it down?
Do you mind giving me some examples of what you consider the big shit?
Every day, like everything's everything's big. No, but okay, it's a good question. So, like spending time with my daughter
Yep.
is
That's a
really
thing.
big.
It's a big thing.
Building a team is really big.
Yep.
Making as much money as possible is really big.
Yeah.
Trying not to piss my wife off is really big. And that, I guess I speak for everybody about that, but what I mean is trying to, I guess, relate it to the business. I mean, I'm 4 years in, but I'm still feel there's a long way to go here, and we can go big, big, big. But everything just seems like, fuck, everything's so important.
Yeah.
Which I know that what I'm hoping you're going to tell me is, everything's not important, Ali. Find the one or two things. But how do you, in your life, how do you prioritize what's really important?
First of all, the three things you just listed, your business, your wife, and your daughter, I mean, those are probably the three biggest things in your, so you're already there, you've already narrowed, and you're still feeling spread thin. So on the one hand, yeah, you're really stressed out and you're spread thin, but on the other hand, this is like this is exactly the life you want. You've got your three most important things are taking up all of your time, so that's actually, this doesn't sound like a good problem, but this is a good problem. That said, I mean, I think in this situation, it's good to be strategic about timing, right? So I know in my marriage, particularly, like my wife and I, we have a very good communication around like, okay, when are the sprints in my business coming? When am I going to back off? Like she and I just kind of, I keep her apprised of the situation of like, hey, 2025 is going to be like a big year. I'm not going to be around as much. I'm going to be working on some weekends. But down the road, things are going to slow down, and I'll have more time and all that stuff. So it's like just have open communication about that stuff and set expectations on the marriage front. I think that helps a lot. And then with the kid, like the kid's tough because that's time you're never going to get back, and I think it's probably worth thinking very hard about, not to say that your business will always be there, but like some business opportunities will always be there. Whereas however old your daughter is, like she's only going to be that age once. So I would really try to be strategic around like, okay, this is a part of her life that I think is worth giving up some of my business opportunities to focus on it. And then maybe there's some other times like when she's a teenager where you're like, yeah, I'd actually rather be at work. So like, try to like map it out over the long run and think of it in those terms and just understand that you can't do everything all the time perfectly. Look where you're willing to give things up and on which front you're willing to give them up. Cool. And get your wife on board too. Make the decision together. Don't just do it yourself.
Thanks, mate. Thanks.
There you go. I've got a question, and I'm the host, so I'm going to ask a question.
Okay.
How do you change your mindset? Because that mindset shift from giving too many fucks to not giving as many fucks, but giving fucks about the right. I'm getting as many fucks as I can in front of my bosses. It's perfect. I love it. How do you? I mean, apart from buying your book, obviously, what are the? Do you have to practice it every day and just keep practicing, or does it just come from reading the book?
Part of it is the prioritization piece. Part of it is like a muscle, right? It's kind of like public speaking. Like if you've never gotten on a stage before, it's terrifying. You do it 10 times, it gets easier. It's probably the same with sales. Like the first time you show a home is probably terrifying. Your 100th home that you've shown, you're like, oh, this is easy. You can do it in your sleep. So it is like anything that you do. It needs to be practiced and implemented in your life. You can't just, sit at home in your bedroom and be like, I don't give a fuck about this anymore. Like you actually have to go live it.
Right, yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. And buy the book.
Yes.
Good. Well, I think we're at time now. Mark, thank you so much for coming all the way over to the US for us. I think you're going to hang around maybe for a couple of minutes for us.
I'll be around.
Photos or whatever.
Sure.
So as I say, from a personal point of view, it's been a real honor having you here and having you with the audience. And hopefully you'll all start to give less fucks about the small stuff and more fucks about the big stuff. And truly just go out there and do stuff. It doesn't matter. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Manson.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
So good. Really good.